In the previous session, we discussed hovering mechanisms on our navigation, which is a perfect segue to links and hypertext reference. But we did run out of time. So in part 5, we're going to go into hypertext reference in depth and how all of the pages within the application either interact with one another or they are connected in some ways because of the location. All files are located in a specific folder. And obviously, if they're not included in the same folder, you have to create a sort of directory that will link to that particular file. Obviously, if you're going to have a directory of files, you have to have some files to work with. And we've got you covered there. You want to go to our website, www.docklesolutionsinc.com, and download the CSS, HTML5, and JavaScript files in this particular video. We're going to start off with the home page. Now, we've discussed briefly in the previous session the hypertext reference. The reason why on the navigation bar you are able to click on a link and be able to go to a different page is via the hypertext reference. The hypertext reference is a piece of code, an A tag with an attribute href that allows you to encapsulate a bit of text, say home for instance. If you put the A tag, what you'll have is a live link. That will allow you then to go to a specific page once you click on the link. Obviously, this is something that has to be done prior to your being able to go to those pages. If the A tag is not there, well, what you'll have is just a text and not an actual link. Okay, so far so good. You have all of your links and they look active. But you click on a link and you get an error in your browser. What's happening here is that you do not have the page in question, the page you were trying to get to. It's not available in your directory. You have it specified in your href attribute, but it is not in the location where it should be. What you'll have to do is create that page and link to it from your navigation bar. If this were a web server, what you would actually have is an HTTP error if your page was not available and you clicked on a link. Now that you have all of the basic application needs, meaning your files in your directory, and you've created your links, you should be able to get to all of your pages without any problem. There are, however, such errors that are specific to the actual application itself. Example, if the input control on, say, a contact page is empty or the required data is not added, you can throw an error to the user. So the user is aware that the field has to be corrected to have data in it or before moving forward. We're going to cover the contact page in a little bit, and we're going to go into the actual validation tactics that we use, especially using an alert box or a label on the actual design to throw a message to the user so they know which field to correct or which error has occurred in the actual application. We're going to go into the contact page. What we're most interested in is the form controls, the input form controls, the button controls. We're going to take a look at how this form makes use of JavaScript to help you, the developer or a user, to interact with the actual design. In this case, we're looking at validation on the form. We want to make sure that a particular piece of data is entered in the specific form control. The first name, last name, we want to make sure that this is not an empty field. And if that's empty, you should be able to see a message once the submit button is clicked on the form. Okay, now that you've seen the form, now that you've seen the input controls and the button controls, it's no secret that you want to actually see the code that's running behind these buttons, that's actually making the validation work. So let's take a look. This particular JavaScript sample is a more beefed up version of the JavaScript in the previous sessions. This one has to do with validation. All of the input text controls are named appropriately so the JavaScript code can call the particular variable into action to either read the record or validate that record or data the moment the button, the submit button, is pressed. In this case, we're validating the first name, last name, email, and phone number to make sure that, first of all, that there isn't an empty field in the first name and last name, and that the phone number is of the proper character length, and that the email address is of a particular format. We want to make sure that the @ sign is there, as just one example, or that the .com is available in the email address. Let's do a brief recap. You've looked at the navigation bar briefly to continue what we had started in part 4 of our sessions, and you looked at the hypertext reference. We looked at a little bit of the hovering mechanism in a list box, which we'll be covering in future sessions in depth. We're going to go into tables as well. We didn't have time for that. And we've looked at the actual contact page, the fields, the JavaScript code, and its interaction with the HTML5 design. We have a lot more to show you, but we have run out of time. We're going to use a regular expression in our next session, part 6, to validate the phone number and email address fields. For the time being, though, we'll leave it here, and we thank you for joining us. And we'd like you to subscribe if you have not, like this video, and ask questions if you have any you'd like answers to. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.